Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the new Marvel Legends Haslab Galactus. Now, this guy is too big, so I'm going to be standing on screen partly, and I'm recording in a headset mic, so it's not going to sound quite the same as it normally does, but it's the best way to get audio without me having the microphone right next to my face because I'm so far away from where I normally stand. This guy's huge. Alright, so it's going to be a strange review. I'm going to do a lot of editing, a lot of cutting, but it should be a good enough quality that you guys get the information you need. So, starters, is it worth the price? Well, I don't know. We're going to get to that by the time we get to the end of the review. But let's go ahead and jump into a question of the day. Do you think it's worth the price from what you've seen? If you've owned it, if you've only seen reviews, whatever the case may be, do you think it's worth the price? I'm going to say my personal opinion before we get through the review, and then I'll give you my final verdict. I think this guy's a better value than the Sentinel was. The Sentinel had all kinds of problems this guy doesn't have. However, it's still a bit pricey for I think what we got. We'll see. I have to see. I have to go through it in the review for me to decide personally first. Okay, so let's do some quick sizing and then we will get underway. This guy stands to the very top, just about 32 inches. That's to the very top of his little antennae, and that's about 81.5 roughly centimeters. We'll do some scaling. This is how big he is up against the ruler that I normally use, which is a 12-inch ruler. Here he is up against Darwin. He's about the size of the head. And then here he is up against a rival collectibles, rival clans ninja. And that's good enough, I think. Okay, so we're going to start with the aesthetic. This guy has a lot more paint than the Sentinel had. He looks a lot better. If you look at his skirt, for instance, there's a few different paint jobs on there. That's very nice. His gauntlets have some detail painting in there that brings them to life. A lot of molded parts, though, but I think they did a good job with the composition, so I think that's okay. I will say, some of it looks really good, like the molded plastic for the biceps. All of this textured stuff looks wonderful. The molded but non-painted, very smooth plastic for other parts of him, it really looks cheap. And unfortunately, I think one of the worst things is that this collar piece, whatever you want to call it, it's not really a collar, shoulder pads, harness, it's just molded smooth plastic. So it does look really, really cheap. Just painting it that color would have made it look a lot better, even if it didn't have any shading or anything. So that's definitely a bit of a bummer. It's also a bit irksome because the face is painted really, really well. Not just the detail stuff, which is actually some molded parts, but the face itself, the skin tone, is painted really nicely. It brings him to life wonderfully, but then we have these other spots that just look like plastic. So that juxtaposition does kind of throw me a little bit, especially for the price point. Like, I get that he's huge and molds cost a lot, especially big molds. I don't know. There's not that much going on here, and they didn't do that great with the articulation, so I don't know. We'll see by the end of the review what I think. A lot of people have been saying this is the best Marvel Legends figure ever, and I have to say, well, it's the biggest, but what actually makes it the best? Just the size? Then sure, if that's your criteria. Is it the articulation? Well, we'll get to that, but it's not great. And is it the aesthetic? Well, I don't know. Like, it looks pretty good. I do wish he had slightly bigger chest and shoulders and smaller hips, but this is an acceptable look for Galactus. I'm okay with that, but it doesn't strike me as being impressive. It's just big, which, I mean, that's supposed to be big, but it still just looks like a Marvel Legends figure. It doesn't look like a high-end collectible. It's just a big Marvel Legends figure with tons of molded plastic with just little painted details. So for me, the aesthetic is fine. It's reasonable, but it's nothing impressive. It's nothing special. It doesn't stand out other than for the size. So again, if you're just into big things, more power to you. But if you're not, if you're looking for the details, this is still just a slightly fancier Marvel Legends figure. So for the price point, I'm going to give the aesthetic, for the price point, a 7 out of 10. It's nothing special. There's nothing that stands out to me as being exceptionally good other than the face, which is huge, so it's not that hard to paint. Like, it's just a little speckly. It's not like crazy good. It's just, I mean, for Marvel Legends it is. So, you know, it's nothing crazy. Okay, let's talk about the accessories. This guy has 3 different faces. We have the neutral face that comes on him in the package. Then we get the angry face, equally good paint job on there. And then we also get the skull face, which is pretty good, except you can kind of see that the teeth aren't really part of it. It's a separate thing. I would like a little bit higher finish quality on these guys. And also the face is, at least the normal face, the neutral face, hangs out over the mask, which makes it look pretty goofy. So again, for the price point, I was expecting better quality. And you're probably thinking, it's still Hasbro, you shouldn't have, and I think you're probably right. So, next up, we have the Dr. Doom head. Second question of the day. Did you want the Dr. Doom head? When this was revealed as one of the tiers, I know a lot of people said they didn't really care. And I personally don't care, because I only remember him having the Dr. Doom head when Dr. Doom was, took over, and it didn't have the same outfit. Like, he had not this chest harness. So, I don't quite get it. But it is done really well. The eyes look awesome. Pretty cool. And then other accessories include actual action figures. So I'm going to kind of run through them, and then what we'll do is I'll do separate videos if you guys want. I'll definitely do at least one, but we'll start with Silver Surfer. It is the same Silver Surfer as before, mostly. Biggest difference would be the head. This looks like the Iceman head that's been slightly altered. I don't love it, but I think it's okay. I do think the previous Silver Surfer head was better, looked more like him in the way I remember him, and this one is a slightly different silver. It's less deep. It's slightly lighter and doesn't have as much of that depth of the metallic finish. So I definitely prefer the previous Silver Surfer to this one, but this one is fine if you like that lighter look. That's a perfectly valid thing. He does come with his board with one peg, and since this is a Haslab, they actually gave him a metallic board and metallic feet, so he's magnetic. That's a lie. They didn't put any effort into this. This is a straight up crappy repaint, honestly. Like, if you already have the other one, you don't need this at all. He should have a metallic board and metallic feet that are magnetized, because he can't, like, you have to just have the board flat, or he can't do any special stances or anything on this, because it's not magnetic. It's easy enough to do that yourself, but they should have. He does come with a total of 6 hands, and his singular blast effect, which they showed 2 in the photos, so we got screwed. And then he does have this purple swoosh to hold his board that clips onto Galactus's hand. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but it can be done. It is nicely colored, though, and it does have some articulation where the board connects. So you better use that peg unless you're gonna pose that board completely flat. Next up, we have Frankie Ray, which is, I don't know. Some people seem to want her to be a different look. And for me, I don't mind that she's made out of the gold plastic. I do think gold paint would have gone a long way to making her look better, just like Silver Surfer. Painted metallics look way better than molded marbles. And this does have a lot of marbling, and it doesn't look good. She's got a big line going right through her one chesticle and some lines on her face. I don't mind the color, because she has looked like this, give or take. Because, I mean, she's not made out of plastic in the comics, but it's fine. I definitely think they should have painted it with the brightest metallic gold they had. Like, paint the whole thing and it would have looked wonderful. The hair does look pretty cool, though. I like that. The face is done pretty well. And then the fire effect that connects to Galactus's hand is okay, though she does have a hard time pegging in to that where her one foot goes, so that's kind of a bummer, but he can hold it. And as far as hands go, she does have a total of 6 hands. Next up, we have our special figure, which is the only truly unique figure that we get in the bunch, which is a shame since this is a giant Haslab. This is Morg, or is it not Morg? I can never remember this guy's name. I'll have corrected it in the post if that's the case, but we have Morg, which is really well done. It's an all-new sculpt, and if you'll notice, he has a really big chest and muscular thighs and broad shoulders, and actually it looks like a comic character, so that's awesome. His red parts have a nice wash, or I think it's a wash. It looks like a wash to me, and it really brings him to life. His head actually looks tiny because it's comic-shaped, comic-sized, proportionally speaking, and so it stands out as being tiny up against other Marvel Legends, but it actually looks really good, and they need to go in this style more often, like all the time. But he does look really good. He will have a separate review so that we don't kill the entire review going over his articulation and stuff, but he's a solid release for sure. Stick around for that individual review if you want to. The only accessory he gets is his axe, which is a little bland, but it's okay. Also, I guess another question we could do is, should Silver Surfer have purple effects, or yellow, or white, or blue? I seem to remember mostly being yellow, but the silver and purple do go well together, so I guess that's okay. I do remember Morg having purple effects on his axe, though, so you guys can let me know what you think about that. Here we go, articulation time. It's actually not that hard. He doesn't have great articulation, which is why it's strange to me that so many people are saying he's the best ever, other than it's trendy and he's big. So the head, believe it or not, has very, very little articulation. It doesn't move well. You can rotate it side to side, though be careful, because right at the top, there's a separation in the, whatever you want to call this, collar armor. So sometimes the head likes to get caught on that. And you don't want to chew this piece up right here, so just be a little bit careful. But you get your rotation side to side, that's fine. It looks up and down only that much. It's pretty limited. Hopefully you guys are getting a good view of this now. So it's very, very limited. It does lean just a touch, but that's because it doesn't have any real articulation. It's just this. It's just this bit that rotates around at the top. And that's because it has an infrared feature where if you turn on down here, it shoots an infrared signal up into the head, and that tells the head to turn on. Even though they both have their own independent buttons, that's how they built it. So they have to make this, like, it can't move too much or it won't work. This piece has an opening at the top. You guys should be able to see that, I think. That opening is where the signal gets sent through this piece of plastic, so it can't move too much or it won't turn on the lights. Why is it infrared? Why did they do that? It seems like wires would have been good. I guess it's nice to be able to turn the head on separately from the body, but to me, articulation's more important than having some gimmicky light feature. So that's a thing. The head has virtually no range. I'll point this out. My buddy Frecky told me about this. Because it's an infrared signal that gets shot up from the torso up to the head, you can shoot this with some TV or whatever kind of remotes you have that are infrared, a lot of radio nowadays, but if you have an infrared remote, it will turn the head on if you shoot it into the neck. So it's kind of pointless, but if you're real creative and clever, know some stuff about electronics, you could probably get your own, or take this sensor out, put it somewhere, like hide it down behind here or something, I don't know, and then you can shoot your remote at it, or a remote at it, and it'll turn the head on, potentially. I know a lot of people are having trouble with that. I know some other reviewers have talked about it, or at least one, I think Shardamus did. It's probably because you're using a radio remote. A lot of remotes are radio nowadays, so you need infrared or it won't work, but you can do that. But yeah, the articulation on the head, very, very limited, so that's kind of a bummer. So it has batteries in the head and in the chest. There's a light up here and a light up here button, and it does that, and I'll show you at the end. But articulation-wise, the head is trash. It's just trash. This is hard plastic, so as you might guess, the shoulders don't work. Well, mine wasn't even snapped together properly over here, so that was wonderful. But the shoulders, they go up that far, which isn't quite horizontal, but it's probably enough. Very ratcheted, that's fine, that's a good thing. But as you do that, it splits this, at least on mine, and I have to snap it back together. That time it didn't do it. It has done it multiple times though, so maybe you guys are having that same problem. That's lame. Also, it scratches the crap out of the shoulder plastic, which is like this really smooth plastic, so any scratches really stand out, and that's lame because this is a super expensive collectible. I don't want it scratching itself just by posing it, so that sucks. Bringing the arms forward, that's as far as it goes because of the shoulder, unless you stick them out to the side. So then you can bring them out farther, but that's like so limited. This should be soft and flexible and painted, but not hard plastic. Whose idea was that? It's a separate piece. Make it flexible. Not being able to move his arms forward is ridiculous. He has to stand out like a friggin' scarecrow. That's lame. That's really lame. Best Marvel Legends ever? I'm thinking not so far. His shoulders, like, you can't really use them for very much. He's just going to stand like this with the two things in his hands, and that's it. Bicep swivel is ratcheted, so that's good. That way when he's holding stuff, he doesn't just flop over. So that's okay. No problems there. Double jointed elbow, ratcheted, but not exactly the best range ever. It's very, I mean, it's what you would expect for the gauntlet. Can it not go down farther? There we go. So you get about 90, but it's quite limited. Like, that's it. So again, best Marvel Legends ever? I don't think so. It's big and explainable, but that doesn't make it the best ever. So I don't get it. Okay, let's do the arms before I move the camera. I hope this is working out. It seems like you guys can see everything I'm doing. I'll move him this way some. So he does have a swivel right here. I'm hoping this is focused. Otherwise, I'll have to do a lot of editing. It's ratcheted and it swivels at the wrist, so that's cool. This won't get in the way. Let me move this like this. So this guy right here isn't going to get in the way of posing the hands because you'll just turn this however you want to, so that's a good thing. And then the wrists are on, I thought it was a ball peg. I think it is actually a ball peg with a hinge. So it's the standard hinge you normally see, but instead of a straight peg going into the forearm, it is a ball peg, so it moves around a little bit. So that's pretty cool, and the hinge does work, and it's ratcheted. Not like the Sentinel who has floppy wrists. So the cool thing about this guy is his thumb has a swivel in it so that you can actually open or close the hand like a gripping hand or a wide open hand. And then each of the knuckles has a swivel hinge in it. So, well, each of the big knuckles has a swivel hinge, and all the other knuckles have a singular hinge. So he can pose his hands as much as you could possibly want. And it actually works really, really nicely. So that's good. So for the torso, now this is the thing, it's like best Marvel Legends ever is the question that I'm trying to answer here. Is it? Well, let's see how much range he has going forward. That's it. Almost none. He's taller than every figure you have in your collection. He can't look down or lean forward very well. How far can he lean back? Almost none. Very little range. What about side to side? It's decent. Side to side's okay. That was a leg. Side to side is okay, but it doesn't do that much. So again, careful with the head. It doesn't have any range in the torso. Does it rotate? Only up at the diaphragm, only up here. So you've got the reverse ab crunch and then the diaphragm, but all he gets is a little bit of rotation and almost no leaning. So again, asking that question, is it the best Marvel Legends figure ever? To me, so far, it's grossly overrated because it can't pose. They might as well have just done a statue with posable arms, because that's so far all we have. Okay, another thing I noticed while I was editing is that as I was doing the articulation, only the diaphragm joint up here in the rib cage, that was the only thing moving. He does have an ab crunch in here. So that should also work, unless it doesn't. So we're going to try again, and we're just going to see if I can get any... These arms not being able to go forward is such a pain in the butt. We're going to see if I can get any more range out of this torso. I guess the ab crunch is working. It just doesn't have... There we go. It has a little bit more range. So yeah, in conjunction, because that was the upper diaphragm that I just did, and the ab crunch, you can see he does lean back a little bit more. So that's a good thing. But let's see how far he can lean forward. I have to say, this is the first time I've had to use my whole body to pose an action figure. There we go. Okay, so he does lean forward a little bit more than I initially thought. It's still pretty limited. They can't really do much with all this junk in the way. But the reverse ab crunch does work, and the diaphragm in conjunction gets you about that far, which will make him somewhat easy to tip. So you might want to get some leg action in there to keep him from falling. But that's better. Just smacked the mic. Hopefully it wasn't too bad for you guys. But that is better. He can pose farther forward than I initially thought. So that's a good thing. These giant reviews are definitely a hassle to film. And that's not a problem. It's just sometimes you have to go back and reshoot things and talk about the editing process in the review. But either way, now you know the torso isn't as bad as I initially thought. It's not great. It's not going to change the score any, but it's a little bit better. Okay, now for the lower half, you would expect his skirt to get in the way, and it does, but it's not terrible because they have allowed them to flex out of the way plenty, so that's not a problem. They have the side pieces overlapping nicely with this piece right here, and underneath this over this, so that's good. But you're not going to get a lot of range out of his hips. Okay, that's as much range as I can get out of that hip comfortably. I could maybe really force it, but that's about it going forward. So that's pretty limited. Going back, a touch, but again, not very much. And then going out to the side, which I would say is too loose even though it's ratcheted. Those first ones don't feel ratcheted, the front to back. Going out to the side, he has decent range. Like, you're never going to be able to use that, practically speaking, anyway. So that's really good range, I guess. But otherwise, his hips are pretty limited. He does have a thigh swivel, which isn't ratcheted, but it's not too loose. As for the knees are fine. They're not like the Sentinel knees, so that's pretty good. They're very ratcheted, and they have good range-ish. Like, it's a little better than 90, which will be fine for Galactus, but again, it's not exactly impressive. Alright, now for the ankles. The ankles have these flaps here that are hinged and flexible, so that's decent. That hides the ankle well enough. The ankles go back that far, which isn't a ton, but it's going to be enough because you're not going to be posing him that crazy. And then go forward really far. Better than most Marvel Legends, so that's good. And then the rotation, or the ankle rocker, is stiff and at a pretty steep angle, but it does work. So that's good. Does this rotate? It does. I forgot to mention that. So the ankle rocker and that combined will work nicely. So the ankles are probably the best part of this guy, which is strange because Galactus doesn't need to pose that much. So as far as the articulation goes, it's like, okay, it's Galactus, so is that good enough? Probably, practically speaking. But is that what we're paying for? And do you want to be able to do more if you want to? Which is kind of my theory on action figures. It shouldn't be limited only to what it has to do. You should be able to do what you want to do with them, in my opinion. I'm not going to knock it too hard because it is Galactus, so that's reasonable, but I do think it should be able to pose a lot better than this. If nothing else, this should be soft. There's no way his shoulders should be that limited. There's no way his shoulders should get scratched up every time you pose them. This should be soft, only from here to here, like right around the shoulder. That should be soft, no doubt. There's no reason it's that tight. There's no room for it, and it's hard. Not okay. The head having no range at all and popping off constantly. Not okay. Like, it's not going to pop off if it's just sitting there, but every time I handle it, it should have some kind of retention in there. So that's a bummer. So for me, the articulation is just average at best. Actually, it's not. It's worse than average. It's very, very limited. So articulation gets a 6. You can say it's justifiable if you want to. That's not for me to decide as a reviewer. I'm just telling you how it's not functional. You can decide if you care about that or not. For me personally, he's going to stand there not doing much, so it's technically okay, but it's still a limit. Okay, and then lastly, we had to talk about the light up feature. You get the button in the chest that lights up the chest and the head, or you can just press the button in the back of the head that lights up the head. The lights are super bright in some places and not as bright in others. That's fine. They do pulse and things. There's no option to turn them off, and there's no option to leave them on. They just stay on for a certain amount of time and then they turn off. If you don't want them on, it might seem too long. If you do want them on, it's going to seem too short. Why don't we just have a switch? Press it, it turns on. Press it again, it turns off. That seems simple to me. Why does it have the fading feature? I don't get it. You have to put your own batteries in, so if they die, that's on you. I don't get that. It lights up on the ears too. That's pretty cool, but down here where it should light up, it's just painted. I don't like that. This is a premium thing. It should have everything. They have lights everywhere for like the main lights, except for this, which is right next to another light. So to me, that's not okay. That doesn't look good. I don't like that. It does light up on the back, by the way, so that's nice if you want that. But the light up feature is fine. Okay, another question of the day. Should they be blue? I know on this particular version of Galactus, they're blue, but aren't they also like his eyes? Aren't his eyes red and everything else blue a lot of the time? That's what I thought. So I was thinking it would have been cool if his eyes were a different color. Or maybe you could select them. Like the Sentinel had different colors, and this guy doesn't. So, again, it's good. It's fine. But is it enough? For me, I think we should have had options for the lights. LEDs cost next to nothing. Switches don't cost that much either. They already have switches. Make it click to turn red, click again to turn blue, or something like that. I know that technically blue is fine for this, so it's not losing a point or anything, but this is the most premium Marvel Legends figure there is. So why doesn't it have the most premium features? That's irritating to me. Okay, so the lighting feature is fine. It's nothing crazy impressive. It's nothing bad. It's fine. I'll show you where the batteries go. This piece pops off. You unscrew that, put in some batteries, and then the top of his noggin. This thing right here. This thing is kind of, like, it's not heavy for an action figure that's this big, but it is heavy to hold one-handed like this. This whole top part just pops right off, super easy. Okay, so before I do a final verdict on this awkward review, I just want to do some final thoughts. It doesn't fall over easily. That's good. It's well balanced. Again, for this size, it doesn't weigh too much. His feet are nice and sturdy. His hips are sturdy enough. His torso sturdy enough. It's way better than the Sentinel in a lot of ways. It's not that much bigger than the Sentinel, though, so I don't have mine handy to show you, but I'll post a picture that Dwight posted. He's not that much bigger than the Sentinel. That's why when I do scale, I measure to the head, top of the head, not the hat, because this guy is a lot taller than the Sentinel overall, but his shoulders are only like, I don't know, a ½ inch taller, so he's not that much bigger. I don't know if it warrants the price, honestly. He's a lot more expensive than the Sentinel, but not that much bigger, so I don't know how I feel about that. But okay, that's enough. That's enough rambling. Final verdict on this guy. I think for the price point, I don't care if people get mad. I'm going to give it a 7. It's stupid expensive for as basic as it is. It doesn't pose. Barely at all. You can't pose it very well. the paint job on it is good where it is, but it needs more, and the smooth plastic shouldn't get chipped up as you try to pose it, which you can't do well. Not being able to look down. The light up feature, not even having an on-off switch other than just on and let it sit for any questionable amount of time. It just seems unfinished. Needs more paint. Definitely needs more paint. Soft parts here. There's so many things that could have easily been done to make this so much better that they just didn't do. So I'm going to leave it at a 7. That's it. Is it the best Marvel Legends figure ever? To me, no. Because it has to be overall value per dollar. And they put a lot of dollars to this thing. So they have to bring the game and bring their game, bring the A game, whatever, you know what I mean? They didn't do that. So to me, it's fine. If you want a Galactus that's big, get it. I don't think you'll be super disappointed, but considering how much it costs, you're not going to be like thrilled, I don't think, unless you're just giddy like a kid because it's big. It's a big toy, so that's cool. But we're adult collectors, so I have to assume you're going to have a little bit of a discerning eye at least. And to me, a discerning eye finds too many problems. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to. I have new videos almost every single day and thousands already on the channel. So make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.